All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Hello, and welcome to today's information session with the Federal Emergency Management Agency. As you all know, they're also referred to as FEMA. My name is Warner Petzold. I'm an employer outreach specialist for the University of Arizona Global Campus, and I'm a 10-year Air Force veteran. We are excited you could join us today to learn more about the exciting careers with FEMA and how to create a strong federal resume. Please note that this information session has been extended to 90 minutes since it will include valuable information regarding federal resumes. And before I turn over the floor to FEMA, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. For all those who registered for today's information session, the recording will be emailed to you in a few days. We will take time to answer as many questions as possible during and at the end of the presentation. At the bottom of the screen is a Q&A button. You can submit questions with your name or anonymously to be answered live. We do our best to get as many questions as we can, but however, if your question is not answered by the end of the presentation, you can email it to careerservices@uagc.edu, and we will follow up with feedback to get any remaining questions answered. Also, feel free to engage in the chat. You can pose questions in the chat, and members of the Career Services team will be available to help answer questions throughout the presentation. And of course, we'll be answering questions at the end of the presentation as well. If you have any technical difficulties, we recommend logging out of Zoom and logging back in. Now, I would like to introduce our guest employer. Joining us today is Chip Lankert, lead talent recruiter at FEMA. Chip has served many years at FEMA, and he's a 22-year military veteran and served in the Marine Corps and the Virginia Army National Guard. Also, I have worked with Chip for several years now, and I can tell you from experience, he's passionate about his work and he wants people to succeed. Chip, we are excited to hear your presentation, and thank you for joining us today, and I will go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Good afternoon, U of A, Global Campus. Glad to be here today. Really excited to have this opportunity to share with you some information about FEMA. And not only is information about FEMA, but information in general about building federal resumes, because it's not just about my agency. Not everybody's a perfect fit for FEMA. And, you know, even when I recruited for the military, sometimes it's better to refer somebody to another place, because not everybody can be in the Air Force, not everybody can be in the Navy, and some people don't even belong in the military, which I'm sure a lot of people have realized once they spent their time in. So to me, it's always better to put the right people in the right place. So the skills I'm going to teach you today, you can use with any federal agency. Also, when we get to the end of it, I'm going to go into USA Jobs, and instead of just sitting here and this is how you build your federal resume line by line. I'm going to give you the particulars, what should be in there, but I'm going to go into vacancy announcements on USA Jobs. I'm going to show you where you get the answers to what you should have in your federal resume, because that's the key. Is somebody can give you a template and tell you all day long, fill out this template and you'll have a good resume. But unless you know where to look, and unless you know the rules of the game as to what the agency is going to look for, you're going to hit a brick wall every time. And believe me, I learned from experience. You're going to hear my mistakes and horror stories in here too, because sometimes the best way to learn is to show somebody what you did that was wrong. And I'm a firm believer in that, because I think once you understand what to do, it's a simple process and it works very well. And I love it when people reach out to me and tell me, hey, I just got my job. I just had someone emailed me the other day through Teams, or Teams mailed me other day through Teams, and said, she just finished up orientation on Friday, and today was officially her first full work week in FEMA. And it was all because of one of these workshops that I did. And that's the way I started designing these features. And I'm looking to see where everybody's from. I see some other Florida people representing here all over the country. So this is good. It's one of the things I love about a school like the University of Arizona Global Campus is it's not just one geographical area. And I love that about it, because we've all been through different backgrounds and we all have different experiences. But the thing is what I found with these non-traditional learning institutions, people are going back to school after they've had a career or part of a career, and they're going on. And those are the ideal candidates for federal organizations, because somebody just graduated from college is not necessarily going to have any experience to go along with that resume. And a lot of times when you look at jobs, and we'll talk about that today, your years of experience are what's going to decide whether you're even going to be eligible for that job. So without any further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go into this presentation. We should be seeing, I'm sharing my screen. You should see the FEMA as what I just saw. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, as Warner said. It's part of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. We're one of 10 organizations that fall within this agency. And we all work very closely together. I just got back from Arlington, Texas a few weeks ago, a huge job fair. We had over 4,500 people showed up over a 2-day period to apply for federal positions. And those are the kind of events that I really love doing, because you can really guide people in the right directions when everybody's in the same room. Okay, what is our mission? Our mission's pretty simple. We help people before, during, and after disasters. It's not just when it's in the news. There's a lot of times when we're out there working. And the thing about it is every FEMA employee, including myself, is an emergency manager. Might not be it isn't my job title. My job title is a senior HR specialist. Used to be a personnel security specialist when I was with FEMA. But the thing about it is when the disaster struck last year and I got mobilized to go down and respond to Hurricane Fiona in Puerto Rico, they didn't need either of those skills down there. What they needed was logistics personnel. And since I understood how to do FEMA paperwork to request and purchase things, and I understood how to do logistics from my time in the military, I was able to step right into that role and accomplish that mission. Still did some recruiting stuff while I was at it, but the need was for me to step in and do that other job. And that's what was crucial about it. I really enjoyed what I got to do. FEMA is a very large organization. We have 21,000 employees. We're a very diverse organization. You can see some of the breakdowns of the numbers here. We're diverse because we deal with a very diverse population that's responding to their personal responses to a disaster, something that happened in the area that's outside of the norm. People in a stressful situation tend to identify better with people that are similar to them. That's why we need such a diverse workforce, because we want people to be relaxed and comfortable after they've been through those stressful situations. What does it mean when there's a disaster? That's a question people are always making comments to me when they find out I work for FEMA about, oh, I just saw this in the news. How soon is FEMA going to be there? Well, there's a couple things that have to happen before we get to bring our toys and play in the sandbox. The first thing that has to happen is that governor or that territory director, if it's one of the states and U.S. territories, or that tribal leader, has to request assistance from the federal government. We can't just arbitrarily show up, say we're here to help. We have to get asked. And then the president of the United States has to approve us going in. Until those two things happen, we can't come and support that disaster. Plus, we really need the place we're supporting to let us know what is needed. Because we just can't show up with stuff because, well, last time we went to a disaster, this is what we brought. No, we have to have the right equipment to do the job. So we need them to tell us where their challenges are and what they need help with, and then we can respond to it in a much more efficient manner. Now, when we respond, this is what most people think about when they think about an organization like FEMA. They only think about response. They think when Jim Cantor comes in and Weather Channel's there and they're taking up that 3rd floor of a building so he can show you the storm surge and everything, that's when they think about FEMA and the fact that FEMA needs help. But the thing is this is just the tip of the iceberg. Response is the very beginning of the process. That's when we go in and protect property, minimize suffering, sustain lives. But what we're really doing is we're coordinating all that. We are running the federal support through the operations, logistics, the personnel. We're making sure the right people and the right equipment are in the right places to do the job. But like I said, this is just a very small portion of what we do, because once all the news crews leave, everybody kind of forgets about FEMA. Well, at that point, we're moving into the recovery phase. Recovery phase is very, very long term. Give you some examples of that. When I went down to Hurricane Fiona last October and November, I was down there in Puerto Rico responding to Hurricane Fiona. Well, we were still dealing with 2017 when Hurricane Maria hit down there and it wiped out most of the power grid. They're still dealing with that. We had rolling brownouts. We had rolling days where we had no power because they're still trying to restore the power from way back then because they didn't have the infrastructure in place to be able to just put lines back up. Sometimes those lines were trees that didn't exist anymore. They didn't have the phone poles up. They were putting lines on trees that were growing. So there's a lot of different things that are, we have to deal with. That's one example. We're still involved in Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Sandy, New York and New Jersey, 12 years of recovery. A lot of stuff we're doing right now is responding to incidents that happened 2-3 years ago, not responding, but still dealing with the recovery on incidents that happened 2 or 3 years ago. It takes a long time for a community to get back to where it needs to be, and for families to get back to where they need to be. And that's one of the reasons we share our position so much, because we need people all the time. Even when you don't see it in the news, we're out there doing that work. FEMA's locations, I'm going to go over them right now. Our headquarters is right in Washington, D.C., right now near the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. Great location in D.C. along the National Mall. This is where we coordinate everything that goes on in response to the 54 states and territories. That's where our main operations center is. We have a lot of offices throughout the DC region, and that's where we're going to find a lot of our positions. In fact, about 80% of our full-time jobs are going to be right there in the Washington, D.C. area. And like I said, we're setting the policy, setting the procedure, putting the guidance in place, managing the human resources and the security, managing all the stuff that needs to go on to get all these people on the ground. But we don't do all the work out of DC. We coordinate with 10 regional offices. Each one of these color-coded areas has one regional office, fairly close to the center of it in each case. And that's where we manage what goes on in those states and territories that encompass those areas. And we have full-time positions there as well. And I'll go over the different types of jobs here in a little bit to explain the difference between them. But these regional offices are where we manage things. And I'll just give you a little example. Region 6, our main office is near Dallas-Fort Worth in a little town called Denton, Texas. But we also have what we call joint field offices, smaller offices in Houston, in Austin. There's another one in Santa Fe, New Mexico, responding to the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fires that happened a little over a year and a half ago out there. They also have disaster recovery offices, JFOs in New Orleans and Baton Rouge, Louisiana, all based out of Region 6. So it's important to understand that as you're looking for different types of jobs, because we're not going to be everywhere. You notice I didn't say Oklahoma and Arkansas. Unless we have an ongoing recovery from a disaster there, we don't have any offices there right now. We do have some small contingencies of FEMA, maybe 2 or 3 people assigned to each state's emergency management agency to act as the federal liaison. But those aren't in that. Not every state has asked for that, so we don't have that in every single state. But there's, like I said, positions out there. Okay, Zoom dropped and it brought me back in, so I just want to make sure I'm still good. When I go over the types of positions, most people only think about this type of job with the federal government when it comes to any agency. They think of those permanent full-time, those GS or general schedule positions, because that's what most of us are familiar with. So we don't know anything different. It's like, it's like Werner was in the Air Force, but I know there's more than pilots in the Air Force because I've been around the block for a while with the military. There's a lot of people out there that don't know that they think that everybody in the Air Force is a pilot, and that's okay, because you don't know what you don't know, and that's why we give these informational sessions. But these permanent full-time positions, there's those competitive jobs, very competitive in nature. You go to USA Jobs and you start applying for these positions, and we apply and we apply and we apply and we apply. And then we apply 5 or 6 more times and we still get very frustrated. I know I always do, because I was like, but I know I'm qualified for the job. Why am I not getting an interview? Why am I not getting a job offer? Well, you're going to learn a little bit about that today. Up the slides unshared, so I can redo that real quick. Slides should be back now. I apologize, but these permanent full-time positions are very competitive. There's special hiring authorities that go along with these, but these are very competitive in nature, and you really have to have a great federal resume that really showcases all your skills related to that job. Let's scroll down to the next screen. Some of these competitive hiring, non-competitive hiring authorities, these are critical to understand. I'm not going to go into them in 100% depth. I'm just going to do a tip of the iceberg thing, because you know what? These are all on our FEMA careers page, which you're going to get a link to. The Veterans Recruitment Authority, that's good for pay grades below GS11, GS11 and below. It's also only for captains and below. Majors and above aren't eligible for Veterans Recruitment Authority. This is more of a mid to junior level grade. Goes through all the enlisted ranks, but it doesn't go major or above. But special hiring authority, you have to have served in the military. It has to be within the last 3 years, and you have to have earned some type of campaign medal. 30% or more disabled vets. That's how I got hired in FEMA way back when. 30% or more disability, you're eligible for that special hiring authority. That doesn't matter what your grade is, doesn't matter what the grade of the position you're applying to is, you're eligible. That doesn't mean you have to get hired. That just means you're eligible for that non-competitive authority. Your resume still has to stand out and show that you have the skills for the job. Go to Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps federal staff, AmeriCorps Vista. They have a special hiring authority for about 2 years after they complete their program. A little bit different. If you need more information on it, you can definitely reach out to me. But I'm going to talk about the next one a little bit. Individuals with disabilities, those Schedule A applicants. Reason I'm going to bring this up, there's a lot of veterans out there that are like I was. I waited 8.5 months to get my disability letter from the VA. If you're going to be getting any type of disability, whether you're a civilian, whether you're a former military, whatever the case may be, you're eligible to get a Schedule A letter that just says you have a disability that qualifies you under Schedule A, and that qualifies you for that special hiring authority. I can send the link out through Werner later, because it's important to do that research if you think you fall into that category. And of course, there's a military spouse hiring authority as well, and that's revamping with some new changes to the executive order. I can't speak on it yet, but I've seen the advanced copies of it, and it's really exciting. Some of the changes that are coming with that to really help out the military spouse and the military family. So there's a lot of great things coming on that. And I know as soon as I get it, I'm going to send stuff over to Werner so he can get it out to all you guys as well. But I want to go into these next 3 positions are exclusive to FEMA. No other federal agency has the next types of jobs I'm going to talk about, because they're paid for under federal disaster funds. Well, guess what? Only one agency has access to those funds, and that's FEMA. First one I'm going to talk about is the core employee, the cadre on-call response and recovery employee. This is the category I transitioned into from a permanent full-time employee. Did that because these are 80% of our full-time jobs. Those PFT positions are only 20% of the full-time jobs that are out there for us. So if that's all I was looking at, I'm missing out on that other 80% of the jobs out there. What I also saw is I had more opportunities for advancement if I was looking at 80% of the, now I'm looking at 100% of the jobs in FEMA instead of just 20%. So I moved into this cadre on-call response and recovery, paid under federal disaster funds, which means I'm not impacted by federal shutdowns. If the continuing resolution is not passed in 2 weeks, my permanent full-time counterparts, some of them are not going to get to come into work. I'm going to get to continue to work and draw my paycheck because I'm paid under federal disaster funds and we're not subject to government shutdown. But what we do is we're on 2-year appointments. Every 2 years, I get a letter that says I'm extended for another 2 years. I'm on my 4th 2-year appointment now. And it's just a renewal process, just kind of like re-enlisting was in the military, except we don't initiate it. FEMA does it for you because they want to keep you on the team. Now, in 8 years with FEMA, I've only seen 2 people not get renewed under core, and that's because those positions were no longer necessary. They were obsolete skills. But those people ended up getting hired under something else. They just had to apply for new positions. But these core positions are very unique. Like I said, they're unique to FEMA. They're also unique from the perspective is it's a quicker hiring path. It doesn't require as much process to go through. If it's on USA Jobs, which is where most of these jobs you're going to find them, you have to go through that formal hiring process. But when I got hired into this recruiting job, it wasn't on USA Jobs. I turned my resume in at a job fair, similar to what you could do today after you've been to this event and you have a good federal resume to email me. And when a hiring manager comes to me and says, I'm looking for somebody with this particular skill set, do you have any resumes from recent job fairs or webinar workshops? I can share those resumes. If you meet that criteria, they can select you for that position. There's no list, there's no database you can go to search what's out there. It's just what they reach out to us with on a day-to-day or a weekly basis. We don't know what it's going to be from one day to the next. The other day, they reached out and were looking for contracting specialists, people that were core certified or DIALA certified. And we went through the resumes we had of people met that criteria and sent it over to the hiring manager. So it's a great program for positions. They're under the same pay scale as the GS positions. We're under a pay scale, it's called IC, but IC and GS are identical. So a GS 11 and an IC 11 make the exact same amount of money. We qualify for the exact same federal benefits. We get the same federal retirement. We get the same thrift savings plan. It's just we're paid with different set of funds. And it's important to understand that as you're looking at these positions. And I'll show you how they look on USA Jobs and why some people walk away from them because they just don't understand. They don't know what the rules were. They see one word and it scares them away. Well, we'll talk about that. The next job, which is exclusive to FEMA, is a local hire position. Local hire positions are unique because they're tied to a specific geographical area. And when there's a local hire position, we're looking for people to come work for FEMA on a short-term basis, 140 days. And they'll work for us full-time during that time period. They're probably going to make some overtime while they're in there because we get overtime, unlike I never got any in the military. But these are some great positions, but they have to geographically be where you're located. We have some right now up in Hyattsville, Maryland and Winchester, Virginia, very close to the DC area that people could apply to. But the thing is, it's your way to get some experience with FEMA. It's some way to get your foot in the door. My personal opinion only, is I would not quit a full-time job with benefits to become a FEMA local hire. But if you're between jobs, if you're going to school and you're looking for something to do, this could be a good opportunity for you. These hire extremely quickly. When we put these, you'll see when I show you announcement, well, I'll show you, they have an immediate need to hire. Typically within 24 to 48 hours of you submitting a resume in for a local hire position, it's being reviewed and they're making a determination whether or not you have the skills to come on for the job that quick, because these are immediate need positions, but they are short term. And like I said, you'll see more information about that when I go into the other areas. Next thing I want to talk about is our FEMA reservist position. Our FEMA reservists are intermittent employees. They're on call as needed. Once they get the word they're mobilizing, FEMA picks up the travel, the meals, the lodging, all that per diem is all covered by FEMA. Plus you get your salary. Plus you're going to be working a lot, more than 8 hours a day, more than 40 hours a week. So you're going to get that overtime and all that extra pay for that. And one of the things I really enjoyed when I was in Puerto Rico is all that extra time, because I was working conservatively 65 to 70 hours a week. And that was okay because I was away from home and might as well be doing something. And but the thing was, I also got well compensated for it. But there's no guarantee as to how often you'll be deployed or how long you'll be deployed. But these people are our main workforce during a disaster. You can do this while you're in college. In fact, you can do this while you have another job, because as of October of last year, the Congress and the President passed the Civilian Reservist Emergency Workforce Act, the CREW Act. What does that mean? In plain and simple language, especially for the veterans out there, we now have the exact same protection for reemployment and promotions and everything else rights that military reservists have under the Uniformed Services Employments and Reemployments Rights Act. We are protected. Our full-time jobs are protected. If you're a FEMA reservist, you get mobilized, your employer can't get rid of you. They have to keep your position. If you were eligible for promotion while you're gone, they have to give you that promotion. It's a whole process on there. So this is a really great thing that just got passed that really brought us onto that same level. And I think it's great because the people that I know that I've met that have gone to disasters work very hard there. They work extremely difficultly at these, but these reservist positions, again, are exclusive to FEMA. They're broken down into 32 different sections or cadres. We call them cadres. And each one is grouped based off the skills that you have to perform those duties. And so that means if there's 23 cadres, there's 23 different resumes you would have to write to apply to all 23 cadres because each one is looking for different skills. And if you don't write your resume to the job you want to apply to, you're just throwing it out there and hoping it meets that criteria. That's what I'm going to teach you today is really how to find that information to write those resumes specifically to those jobs. I'm going to show you how we do that here right now because each one of these jobs, and I'll show you this in a second. I'm not going to show you all 23, but I'll show you 2 of them. I'll just pick 2 at random and we'll see the difference between the skills they're looking for. Our reservist program just went through a remake last Friday because we've streamlined the application process. We're trying to make it easy. When you want to apply for a reservist position, first thing you're going to go is FEMA.gov/careers, and you're going to look at all our different positions. We're going to go there in a second. But then you can apply through USA Jobs if there's a vacancy there. If not, you're going to go to this bottom one, and you're going to click on that link, and you're going to get your resume into a database of people that are looking to become FEMA reservists. And then when we get a request from a particular section, let's say it's planning, that they're looking for resumes, we're going to pull all the planning resumes out of there and send them on to them. So that way you don't have to wait till that vacancy is advertised. But let me just double click on this and we're going to open this window here. Verification, and you should now be seeing the FEMA.gov/career. We're looking at the reservist information, but what I'm going to do on the left side here, everything I just talked about is all right here on this page. So I'm going to do this for you right now. I'm going to take this information. I'm going to go back to the chat and I'm going to put this in the chat. So that way you can have all this information without having to try and write it down while I'm speaking. But everything on here about the FEMA Reservist Program is on here. You can go in and learn about the employment and reemployment protections on this link that's right at the bottom here. But what I want to show you with the reservist positions is this is the easiest way to apply is this link right here that says submit your resume, because there's not always a lot of reservist positions on USA Jobs. But here's what I want to show you real quick about reservists. Because what I'm going to talk to you now is going to be related to what you're going to learn is called a specialized experience statement. And I'm going to teach you how to do some homework when you write your resumes. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at this job. If you wanted to go into acquisitions, these are the qualifications to do that job. Just look at them real fast. Contracting, industry engagement, portfolio management, procurement support, and quality assurance. Makes sense for someone that wants to go into contracting. But let's say I don't want to be a contractor. Let's say I want to go and I write my resume. I'm going to turn in my federal resume. If I want to be in acquisitions, I need to list those 5 skills. If I want to be in civil rights, you can see right here, they're not the same skills. So that same resume you work for contracting is not going to work for civil rights. It's just not. And no matter how much you sit there and think, well, yeah, but it's a resume. Somebody can figure it out. No, they're not. If they can't find these answers in your resume, the documentation where you've documented where you've done this work under each and every job where you've done it, you're not going to do well with your resume. It's a simple process. And I used to beat my head against the wall because I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting qualified. What I do when I'm sitting there writing a resume is I'm going to copy these statements into a Word document. This is part of my homework. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down with my resume and with that new document I just created, and I'm going to look at it and say, where did I have experience in community outreach and developing stakeholder engagement? And I'm going to look at every job I had, and I'm going to say, oh, I did that when I ran the safety program at a hospital. Oh, I did community outreach when I was in recruiting for the military. Oh, I did community outreach. And I'm going to list under that skill every place where I did that job. Then I'm going to go back to my resume and say, okay, Chip, you said you did community outreach and developed stakeholder engagement when you worked at the hospital. I'm going to go back to my resume and look at the description of what I did while I worked at that hospital and look for that statement. If I don't find that statement, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to add that statement. Then I'm going to look at my recruiting position I had with the military, and I'm going to look for that statement. And if I don't have it, I'm not going to sit there and say, well, anybody that understands recruiting should understand I did community outreach. No, they have to see it. And I'm even going to show you in a vacancy announcement where it tells you it has to be in your resume. So take some time to do this homework for each and every job you want to apply for, whether it's FEMA, whether it's another federal agency. Do the homework, do the research. We all go through it in college. Surely we can't turn in the same paper for every assignment. And it's the same thing with this. We really need to write our federal resume to the vacancy announcements. So we're going to do that, and we're going to go through that. When you have your federal resumes together, and I say resumes plural, and you'll see why on that in a minute too, but then you can start submitting your resumes, and all you do is click on the link, and it's going to open a new window, and it allows you to put your resume in for the sections that you would like, or the cadres you'd like to be in. Very simple process once you know what it is. The challenge is most of us, we didn't know the rules. No one ever explained the rules of the game to us, and it's hard to play by the rules if you don't know what they are. So I'm going to walk away from this and go back to our slide presentation for a little bit. And I can send all this information in as well. But like I said, it's all right there on the website. And one of the things you're going to see today when I do stuff, I'm going to go right to where things are on a web page and give you that link because I want you to have that information. All you got to do is copy it out of the chat. And I'll even show you at the end how you can download this whole chat history so you have every comment that was put in the chat. What I want to do right now is I want to show you some information that was really enlightening to me, because anytime you apply for a federal position, your experience is what's going to get you the job. The experience is what counts. I used to hear all the time when I was in the military that you had to have at least a bachelor's degree to get on board with the federal government. And that, as I have with a degree. I can tell you that right now. And the reason is experience. Experience drives a train. But I want to show you something when it comes to the federal government that a lot of people don't understand. This really opened my eyes. This slide here indicates, based off of what type of degree you have, what level job you qualify for on education alone. You've never worked a job in your life. You never put any work in your resume. What does that mean? If you have a bachelor's degree, that only qualifies you for a GS5 or an IC, a Core 5 position. Okay, that's not very high. I can say that. I can also tell you it's less than 1% of the jobs we have at FEMA. Less than 1%. So that's less than 200 jobs are going to be at that GS5 level. If I have a high grade point average, I'm in the top third of my class. That's called superior academic achievement. I'm in the National Honor Society. That'll qualify me at the GS7 level. Guess what? When I add my GS7 positions and my GS5 positions together at FEMA, I'm still less than 1% of our jobs. We're not, and I don't know, this is something that's important to understand. FEMA is not an entry-level organization. That's why working with a non-traditional university makes sense to me, because most students have worked for at least 4 to 6 years that come to a non-traditional university, and that's our perfect candidate pool. So this is important. This is why I share this information. A master's degree or a law degree only gets me up to GS9. Now I'm starting to hit a larger number of positions within FEMA. PhD or a secondary law degree only gets us up to GS11. Now, let me share this with you from another perspective. When I applied to come to FEMA in 2015, I was enrolled in a master's degree program, doing it online, doing my best to get my master's degree because I'd already had my bachelor's and realized that I could go back to school and get my master's. I applied for a position at FEMA. In my mind, I thought where they should hire me. It's not where I was hired. But once I read this chart, I realized, oh, I was only qualified for a GS7 because I was a high grade point average. That's all I was qualified for. I got offered a job at a GS11. Why? Because my resume carried me up to the GS11 level. I thought it was well written, but I can tell you right now, it wasn't as well written as it is now, and it didn't qualify me up to that level. Now, one of the things I'm going to share with you, because I just saw it pop up, I keep my chat open in case I see something pop in that's relevant. Somebody says, what if you have multiple master's degrees? Guess what? Still only qualifies you at the GS9 level. You could have 6 of them. You're still only qualified at GS9. It's your experience. It's how you write what you did that's going to set you apart. And I'm going to start talking about something like that as I go into this next set of slides. Where do I get that experience and how do I put it on my resume? So a lot of ways you can get experience. First one I'm going to show, and that's the student volunteer programs at any federal agency. If you're enrolled in school, taking classes, you can enroll in the student volunteer program. It's unpaid, but it gives you the opportunity to work maybe 5 to 6 hours a week, usually remotely, with that federal agency to learn a little bit about working with them, and you get to count that experience on your resume. So, from that perspective, you really don't have to say, I've never had an opportunity for experience. You do. You can do volunteer work, which I'm going to get to in a minute. Guess what? Volunteer experience counts as well. It counts big time. And I'll even show you where it says that in USA Jobs vacancy announcement. Volunteering is really what can set you apart, because I've done a lot of stuff volunteering that I get credit for on my resume. But these student volunteer positions are awesome. Sometimes colleges might even give you some credits out of it, but that's between you and your college. But this can be a great way to get some experience to put on your resume. Most of the time we think of experience when we just do it through work. Now, the one thing I will share about when you list what you did at work, you really have to take off what I call job blinders, like they put on a horse to make sure it can't look left or right. You need to take your blinders off when you're applying for jobs. You need to do it twice. You need to take it off when you look at the job you're applying to, and make sure you just don't look at a job title and say, oh, that's not me. You got to read it, and I'm going to show you that today. But you also have to take the blinders off when you start writing your resume. What did I do when I was in this job? What did I do when I was in the other job? What skills did I use? What skills do I have that are marketable for this job? I might have been a cashier at a department store, but what else did I do? Did I handle accounts payable, accounts receivable? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But if I did, I need to reflect that on my resume. Did I help people fill out credit card applications? You're going to think that sounds a little weird, but let me explain something to you about that, because I use this as an example in my classes. When you sit there, think about when you went to a department store and had to fill out a credit card application. They asked for your ID, you started putting all your information in. It used to be they had you fill out a piece of paper with social security number, date of birth, all that other stuff, your employment income, everything gets put in there, and they gather all that information. Then they turn around and tell you whether or not you qualified or not. Okay? Doesn't sound like much when you sit there and talk about it that way. But let me turn that into how to describe those duties. I gathered personal identification information for the purpose of making a favorable or unfavorable decision to determine someone's eligibility or suitability for a regulated service. I secured all the information in accordance with federal, state, and local regulations. That sounds pretty impressive. I just also described what a personnel security specialist does. I also describe what a medical records specialist does in the healthcare industry. They're just using HIPAA instead of personal identification information. They're using the health personal identification information. But this is what I'm getting at with that point. You got to take the blinders off. What did you really do when you did that job? What skills did you do? Oh, I was a mechanic. Okay, great. You turned wrenches. But is that all you did? Some mechanics will say, yeah, that's all I did. But then it's like, well, how did you know which wrenches to turn? How did you know which equipment needed to be repaired? Did you take all the vehicles down at one time, or did you just do a few at a time? Oh, we had to figure it out. I was like, oh, so you planned. You didn't take them all down at once. You did planning. How did you get the supplies? Did they just magically show up? No, I had to order them. Oh, I had to. All of a sudden you're learning you did more than just turn wrenches. You did a lot of other skills. So you got to sit there and take that off and take off those blinders to really describe what you did. And then you put it in there in your resume. Tell us what you did. Use simple terms, because the person reading your resume may not be as educated as you are. And they might not know what you did in that job title that you had. So you have to put it in simple terms that they can understand. You also want to highlight the results of your work. Tell us what you did, how you did it, and what the outcome was. Don't just tell us that you ran an effective recruiting program for the military. Say, I ran an effective recruiting program for the military where I exceeded my goals by 200% annually, resulting in receiving X number of bonuses, whatever the case may be. If you saved time, if you saved money, give us the results of what you did and how it impacted the job. We need to see that information, because that's what's going to set you apart when you're applying for that job. And you really want to take the time to do that. I already talked about the volunteer stuff a little bit. The experience in the community counts. Volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. American Red Cross, Peace Corps, Team Rubicon, whatever. I'm going to throw one out there on emergency management side and other areas as well. Your local hospitals. Local hospitals always are looking for volunteers. I had my volunteer coordinators looking for people that were enrolled in emergency management programs at local colleges. Why? Or that graduated with degrees in emergency management in local colleges. Why was I doing that? Because the only person that was responsible for emergency management in our hospital was an ER room nurse. She did it as a collateral duty on top of working in the emergency room. And anybody that's been in the emergency room knows they're busy 24/7. So work didn't always get done in a timely fashion. So I said, if I'm going to make sure we accomplish our mission, I need people that understand this a little bit. So that's why I started recruiting those folks and say, I want these people to be volunteers, because they can read policies. They've already been trained on it. We can have them look through it. So it's figuring out where you can use your skills to get that volunteer position, because it's all going to count when you apply. Another place we can go is programs like AmeriCorps or FEMA Corps. This isn't part of FEMA, but I'm going to share it anyway, because I just found out today there's now an AmeriCorps Climate Corps, which is dealing with climate control issues. It just got announced today, as a matter of fact, the 20th. And I put a post on it on LinkedIn with some information about it. But these programs are designed for 18 to 26-year-olds to allow them to get paid a little bit of money to come work with the federal government for 10 months and get that experience to apply for positions. And I can tell you right now, I've worked with a lot of these FEMA Corps folks. Over half of them have bachelor's and master's degrees. They're doing this because they don't have the experience to go along with their resume. Now, if you're over 26, you can still do it as a team leader, managing one of those teams of 8 to 10 people. Again, there's links on this on our webpage as well. But we're going to get into the resume right now. And the first thing I always share about a resume is, what is a resume? It's a snapshot in time of where you are and where your training skills and experience are in relation to applying for a job. But I'm going to give a second definition. It is a paper interview. Your resume is a paper interview, especially with the federal government, because you're going to see today that we tell you all the skills you need to have to do this job. We put it in our vacancy announcements. And if we can't find those answers in your resume, It's the same as being asked 20 questions at a job interview and only answering 5 of them. You're not qualified because you didn't share that you had those skills and experience. So that's why I really like to stress that your resume is a paper interview. You're going to hear me use that term a couple times today. They're looking at it. That hiring manager has to see that you're qualified to do the job. They can't guess. Because, if I put I just did human resources at the federal government on my resume, all that says is I did human resources. Does that mean I did payroll? Does that mean I did benefits? Does that mean I did awards and compensation? Does that mean I did recruiting? What does that mean? Just HR doesn't mean anything. We have to know what skills you perform. That's why you have to write to that vacancy announcement. It has to be relevant to the job you're applying to and give us those examples in there. Like I said, it's your interview. It's the very first interview you get. For some people, if you don't do a good resume when you're applying for a job, you're not going to get the real interview. That's why that's why I stress it's that paper interview. It's the first time somebody's looking at you to consider you for that job. So please make sure that you pass that interview by writing the resume to the vacancy announcement. One of the things I'm going to share with you right now is this federal resume is so different than any other resume you ever wrote. It's not a simple process. It's not just let me list my skills, let me list where I worked, and I'm done. No. It's not that simple. It is very complicated. I have templates I can share with you guys on how to do that. But the thing that's different about it is you're going to be very, very specific. Detail. You're really going to go into detail on everything you did and how it works. And it's going to have to cover those specialized experience statements. Just like I was showing you on the reservist positions, I'm going to show you where they are in the full-time positions. You have to include those answers in your resume and really focus on what you did related to that job, because that federal resume is not going to be a 1-page or a 2-page resume. A good federal resume is 5 to 7 pages long. It's a great deal of information that goes in there. It's not just where you worked. It's who was your supervisor? How much would you make there? Did we have permission to contact your supervisor? Was it a federal or a non-federal job? There's a lot of information that has to go into that resume. So you're going to be putting a lot of detail in there to get that information out there. And I'm going to show you where to gather that information because we're telling you what we need. You just have to write to your experience there. Make sure you list all your certifications and trainings, list all your experience, including that volunteer experience. That all counts. And you're going to see right here, I have a link to a video on how to write your federal resume. Nice thing about that is I don't have to hand you this link right now because I'm going to show you where this link is in every FEMA vacancy announcement. So you can find it whenever you want, and then we'll go visit it and I'll show you a little bit about it. Next thing I want to get into is once I build this resume and I upload it on USA Jobs to apply, what happens with it? This is where I'm going to dispel the first myth today. Everybody says, oh, I need to figure out how to get past the computer program, the algorithm. How can I get past that so I can get my resume reviewed? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, we don't have a computer system that looks at your resume. Every resume that comes in the federal government is reviewed by a person. We have to read that resume. We have to go in to look to see if you meet those minimum qualifications we listed in that resume, in that vacancy announcement for your paper interview. We're looking to see, does this resume reflect they meet those minimum requirements? If it meets the minimum requirements, that staffing specialist, that human resources staffing specialist, is then going to send all the resumes that met the minimum qualifications to the hiring manager. Then the hiring manager is going to look at them, and they're going to determine who the best qualified candidates are for their team of all the resumes they received from the ones that met the minimum qualifications. And I've received what we call a certificate of eligibility, where they list all this from our HR department before when I worked in a different section. And we cut it off after 200 resumes received. I know they hit 200 because it ended early, because it stops automatically after it gets to 200. When we got the resumes, we got 112 resumes. That meant 98 of the resumes that were turned in did not meet the minimum criteria. Sorry for those individuals, but they didn't write their resume to the vacancy announcement. And then we went through the next 112 to determine who were the best qualified candidates. Simple process. So it takes it, like I said, that's the way it's done. And then we can make a determination who's going to get the interview and who's going to turn around and get the job offers. Specialized experience, I mentioned it a couple times already. What makes it so special? And you're going to see it in the announcement. You have to have at least 1 year's experience doing it. And your resume has to clearly reflect that you have 1 year experience. But again, I'm going to go back into that taking the blinders off. It's going to be different for every job. Just because a job title is the same doesn't mean it's going to be the same. It might be a emergency manager. Some of them might be need how to do public assistance and engineering. Some of them might be data analytics. Some of it might be cybersecurity. It just all depends on the job. And you really have to read it, because I've looked at some positions when I'm posting them on USA Jobs, and I look at it and say, not USA Jobs, on LinkedIn, and I say, oh, I wonder what this job is. I've never heard of that before. And I click on it and I was like, oh, I'm qualified to do that. I've done this part, I've done that part, but the job title had a name that I was just not familiar with. So you really have to look at it and spend that time doing that research. And I'll talk a little bit of ways to streamline that process for you as well when we get into it. Which leads us to our next portion, USA Jobs. Majority of the time when you're applying with the federal government, you're going to be working with USA Jobs. And I'll tell you right now, I don't personally like USA Jobs, but it does give you a lot of information. And if you know how to use it, it can be very beneficial to you. So you got to get past that. You know, like I said, it's not my favorite platform because I don't like, applying and applying and applying and applying. I did it for years. But the thing about it is, once I started learning the rules of the game, it became really easy to play. And I was able to start being much more effective with it. Some of the things I'm going to talk to you about on USA Jobs is I'm going to show you how to save some job searches, because I think that's important as you're applying for positions, and because you might want to get notified as soon as they become available. I'm going to talk about uploading your resumes and the documents to go with them, because it allows you to put up to 5 resumes in USA Jobs. Why is that important? Well, you know what? I have a resume for human resources. That's up there. I have a resume for education because I've done a lot of training in education. So I have a resume up there for training in education. I have a resume up there for logistics. I have a resume up there for operations. I have a resume up there for emergency management. Why do I have 5 different resumes up there? I'm not going to use 5 to apply for one job. No, I'm going to focus each resume on the job I want. But what's important about it is as a human resources specialist with the federal government, I have access to all the resumes on USA Jobs to see if I can find a candidate suitable for my positions, even if they didn't apply for one of my jobs, for one reason, which is right down here, diagonal of that. These people made their resume searchable. They clicked on that one block right above where they uploaded their resume. Do you want to make your resume searchable? Yes or no? My recommendation is make it searchable. So somebody, you might not have applied to Department of Interior, but if that HR specialist does a search and your resume matches their skills, you might get a phone call about that. So please take advantage of that. Take advantage of the fact that you can make those resumes searchable and let people search your resumes. It's only going to be people that are certified as HR specialists in the federal government. Nobody else can see it, but it gives those people an opportunity to maybe identify you as a potential candidate without even having applied for that job. That way your resumes are working even when you're not applying for positions. And then of course we use this to apply for our jobs in the federal government. We can even build our resumes through there. But what I want to do right now is go into USA Jobs, and I want to show you some things about it. A lot of great information in here. You can see I already have one filter on to filter for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. But then I can add additional filters to that. If I want to look for logistics jobs, I can just type in a keyword logistics, and it's going to tell me there's 12 positions within FEMA that are related to logistics. and I can go down and look at them. And some of them I'll look at the title, like I said, executive assistant. What's that have to do with logistics? Supply management. Okay, that makes sense. You know, some of them make sense. Some of them I don't get that. General engineer. What's that have to do with logistics? Well, the only way to find out is read the announcement, see what they're looking for, see if you have those skills and experience. It's not just in the job title. But like I said, this is a search, and I can save this search right by clicking on this icon. And then it's going to ask me, how often do I want it to email me the results of this search? Now, I can't click on this now and save it because I have to log in, and that just takes a long time when we're online in a class like this. But that's how you save it. It saves it in your profile. But I'm going to take the logistics out, and I want to show you I'm going to show you a reason why I think this is important. If I turn around and go here to location, I can put a city or a state, but I can also put in the term remote. And please just don't hit return. Click on only show remote, because it's going to all default to the one that's bold. And it really doesn't matter what jobs are in remote Oregon unless I live there. But I'm going to only show the remote jobs, because I get asked this question a lot about what jobs are out there that are remote. Right now, we have 3 vacancies out there that qualify under that remote category. One of them, little bullseye, which I'm going to get into in a little bit, that's a filter that you can do. This is only open to people that work for FEMA right now. Reservists, local hires, full-time employees, core employees. This is only open to them. So don't click on this one and try to apply to it. But what I'm going to say is, when you go into a vacancy announcement, I want you to look at something here. When I look at this vacancy announcement, it says it's remote. It says it's eligible for these hiring authorities. But you're going to see right here, it says this vacancy announcement's open to 9/26. So that's open for another 6 days. But I want to show you something in here that's important to understand when you're looking at a job. Right here is a green bar that says accepting applications. If it's yellow, it's reviewing applications. If it's black, the position announcement's closed. And it says this job's open until 26th of September, but I want you to read this next block below it. This job will close when they receive 100 resumes. And it could be sooner than the closing date. It can be sooner than the closing date. So don't wait to the last minute. I have seen remote positions within FEMA close within 4 hours of going online. Doesn't give people a lot of time to reply to them, but they hit that 100 and can't change that. But what I want to show you with that is it's important to understand that as you're looking at it. But I'm going to go back and I want to see how quickly it'll let me save this search, if it'll let me do it. I tried to do this last night and it was just taking forever. It took like 5 minutes. It's moving a little quicker now. I'm going to show you how to save the search. Hopefully this will move in pretty quickly. And then I'm going to show you how to make a resume searchable, if it lets me get to that screen, because I'm not uploading a new app. It's not getting to let me into it. That's the problem I ran into last night. So let me just close back out of that. I apologize. It's just not letting me do it. So, but let me just go back to USA Jobs and make sure I'm still sharing my screen. Yep, still sharing the screen. Okay. What I want to do right now is show you the importance of the filters, and then I'm going to show you the importance of how to read these announcements. Filters are important because based off your background, based off what you qualify for, will depend. Right now, there's 169 jobs at FEMA you could apply to. But if you don't meet that criteria, don't spend your time applying to a job where you don't meet the criteria, because it'll let you get about 80% of the way through and then it stops you and you just wasted all that time. If you've never been in the military, don't have any type of disabilities, you're just straight open to the public, click on that icon, just look at the 109 jobs that you're eligible for, please, because I've seen people, I get LinkedIn messages from people all the time. They were applying for a job and they couldn't finish it. They don't understand why. They show me the job they're applying for and I say, oh, Are you an individual with a disability? No. Are you a veteran? No. Well, why are you applying to that job? Well, that's the job I want. Well, you're not eligible. You have to use these filters to your advantage. The other thing I'll share with you about filters is, let's say you are a veteran. There's 45 jobs out there for veterans at FEMA right now. But the thing is those aren't the only 45 jobs you're eligible for. You're also eligible for open to the public. So click on both of them. Make sure you're in the right categories. That way you can go ahead and move forward with those and apply for all the positions you're eligible for. These filters are very helpful. You can see right now there's 154 jobs there, but pay attention to those internal to the agency jobs. Please don't apply unless you're eligible, because people spend a lot of time on that, and they get very frustrated when they try to apply and they couldn't, and they find out they weren't eligible, and that's why they couldn't complete it. Next thing I want to talk about is I want to show you some vacancy announcement types that are on here. See, these first two say accepting resumes from veterans and accepting resumes from individuals with disabilities. I want to spend a minute or two on these for you. You're not applying for any job in particular when you apply to these two. What you're doing is you're turning in your resume and those documents that go along with it to qualify for unpublished jobs that we get requests for from hiring managers. We don't know what those jobs will be. You won't know what those jobs will be when you apply to these two positions. So your resume has to be either very specific or very broad. It might encompass 2 or 3 different career fields. But the thing is we're not going to look at those for anything other than those requests we get from a manager. We're not going to use that and say, oh, well, Rebecca submitted her resume under accepting resumes from individuals with disabilities. I'm going to consider that for this supervisory program services specialist. We can't do that. If it's published on USA Jobs as an actual announcement, the only resumes we can look at for that are the ones that apply to that position. So when you put your resume into these, which I recommend you do if you qualify, because we do hire people on an almost weekly basis out of those candidate pools, but you have to understand that going into it, so that way you can apply to every avenue that you're eligible for. I'm going to go down through a little bit more. I'm going to show you something when you read vacancy announcements, how they're going to look. So I told you about all the positions types we have. Local hire positions always start off with the words local hire, and the pay scale is IH. You're also going to see it says it's not to exceed 120 days with the possibility of extension, which makes it temporary because it's short term. But that's okay, because you know that going into it. When you click on it, it'll tell you what locations that job is going to be in. This one I already know is in Denton, Texas, which is outside of Dallas, Hyattsville, Maryland, which is just north of DC, and Winchester, Virginia, which is about an hour west of DC. And these people work our call center helping people fill out disaster claims. Great jobs, great opportunity to get experience with FEMA if they're in your area. Full-time positions are always going to be that GS pay grade. They're always going to say that they're GS and they're permanent full-time. Make sure you understand that when you're looking at those. You'll also see sometimes it looks like the exact same position. This one's the supervisory program specialist in Philadelphia. These are the same job, but they're looking at resumes from 2 different hiring paths. First one is open to the public, a delegated examining. The other one's considered merit promotion, where they're looking for people in any of these specialized categories. So it's important to understand that as you're looking through it. I'm just going to scroll down through a few more. I just want to show you how some things stand out. A lot of local hires in here. I was posting a lot today. Some GS. Okay, core positions. Core positions are that pay scale IC. They're listed, sometimes they're listed slightly different in the way they are, but typically you're going to see this. They're going to tell you it's temporary, not to exceed 2 to 4 years, and it's full-time. They're also all open to all U.S. citizens. Now, one of the things I didn't cover when I talked about the core positions is I call that my playing field leveler. no special hiring authorities apply to a core position. If it's a core position, anybody's eligible to apply for it. So it levels the playing field for people. Where I think that's really important is I know I have some military spouses out there. I know I probably have military spouses in this class of people that are in the National Guard or reserves. The military spouse hiring authority only applies to active duty. Guess what? This just leveled the playing field. You're eligible for core positions. Everybody's eligible for those positions. So it's important to understand that as you're applying for jobs, because if you're only competing against people that have that special hiring authority, it's going to be very difficult. So sometimes it's better to be looking at the positions where it's the playing field's level. They're looking at the experience. Let's go on to the next page. Yes, again, another example of a core position, temporary not to exceed 2 years. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. I want to look at some other jobs just to show you some things that you might strike out to you as different. And then we're going to go into a vacancy announcement. I want to get to a reservist position, and I want to get to a different type of position, which I'll explain to you when I get to it. Okay. Next one I want to talk about here is this position right here, the supply management specialist. You're going to see the pay scale is IT. What does that mean? Never heard of IT before. Well, it doesn't mean information technology. I can tell you that when it's over on this side of the screen. When it's right down in this thing as a pay scale, it says what the salary is. That's a pay scale. It's not a job description. If I go into this job, my CHIP answer to what IT stands for, it's not the textbook answer, but you'll never forget it, is I'll travel. Reason I bring that up is when I go to travel requirements for that job, 76% are greater. And the targeted is that you're going to spend 300 days a year traveling at disaster assignments in this job. That's why I'm sharing this, because if you're not looking for a job where you're going to be away from home that much, please do not apply to this position. You might get the interview, you might get the job, but as soon as you turn around and say, I can't deploy that much for whatever reason, guess what? They're going to release you from that job because you don't meet the prerequisites for the job, because the prerequisites say you have to be able to travel that much. So please pay attention to that when you're applying, and don't spend a lot of time applying for something that you know that's not going to be what you're looking for. Last one I want to go down to is a reservist, and I might have to take a shortcut to that because I'm not seeing one yet. I'm going to scroll down through one more page. And I'm going to go in through my filters here, and I want to go to see if it's safe. I can find one in here. They might have all dropped off the system. Okay, no, and I'm going to try it another way. Sometimes I have to do things a little bit differently. If I go back into my FEMA reservists, I can explore current FEMA reservist positions on 2SA jobs. Okay, there we go. That's the reason I can't find one. There's none on USA jobs right now, but that's okay. What I'll share with about that, though, is that link will always work. And if there's no jobs, it's going to say me there's no, but if there are, it's going to show up there. But the reservist positions, when we go back and we look at that description area, if there was one here, it's going to be about 8 lines long of text. So they stand out real easily, and they always say intermittent on the job title at the end of it. It's like this one says local hire in the beginning. That one would say intermittent at the end. So like I said, these are just some of the ways you can look at this to determine what type of position you're going to apply for. But what I want to do now is I'm going to open up a position, and I want to show you some things about the actual application process. I just noticed something in the chat about somebody wants to know if you can do remote from anywhere. Remote, if it's remote, it's remote. You can be from anywhere. Most positions are tied to a particular geographical area, and it's up between you and your supervisor to negotiate how many days a week or a pay period you need to be in the office. Typically, it's probably going to be 2 days a week. They expect you to be wherever that is. But that's, again, you have to negotiate that with your manager, and that's not something you can negotiate before you get the job. You negotiate it if you get the opportunity, then you can negotiate that. But let's go into this. So somebody's asking, when I'm deployed, can my small dog travel with me? That's going to be up to you. You're probably not going to be able to bring it in the office unless it's a service dog. But if you want to bring your pet with you, I guess you can, as long as the hotel you're staying in is going to allow it, and you're going to have someone to be able to take care of it. Because if you're working during a disaster, you're going to be working a 14-hour day, typically a lot of those days. So you'd have to have a way someone to take care of that dog while you're there. But that's, like I said, that's going to be your call. Let's see. I go into a vacancy announcement. This is where I'm going to find the information to apply for any position I want to apply for with FEMA. A lot of great information in here. Sometimes it'll give us a good summary, tell us about the position, what they're looking for, and we can scroll down on through it and start to really build. There are 3 places where you're going to go to in a vacancy announcement to do your homework. Again, your homework, not your, what I'm going to show you right now is not writing your resume. You're not going to do what I show you here and turn this in as your resume. I'm going to tell you that right now, it's not going to work. You have to use this as a tool to focus your resume. When you get down under duties, they always ask for typical, it tells you typical assignments or typical responsibilities. This is your first homework assignment. You're going to take a look at these statements. You're going to cut and paste these into a blank Word document, and you're going to do exactly like I was talking about earlier. You're going to sit there and you're going to, and I'm going to go back, I'm going to open up something I use as an example here. So let me get into it. I thought it was already open, and it's not. You're going to open a Word document. And you're going to copy those statements into that Word document. And then what you're going to do is you're going to sit down with that, and under each one of these statements, you're going to list all the jobs you had where you performed those duties. Simple. That's not hard. That's really not, because you sit there and look at it. But then the homework assignment, to complete this homework assignment, what you need to do is you need to go back to your resume and say, okay, Chip, you said you led a large geographically dispersed organization that included a significant number of staff at these 4 jobs. So I'm going to go back to my resume and look under Bon Secours, and I'm going to look underneath my duty descriptions there for this statement that reflects that same information. Doesn't have to be exactly the same words, but I'm going to look at that, and I sit there and say, okay, leading a large geographically dispersed organization that includes a significant number of staff. Led a team of 27 off-duty police officers and 14 security officers and 12 telephone operators located in 3 different geographical locations to provide these services. Boom. That's focused on that one. If I look at National Guard recruiting and retention, I led a staff of 147 retention specialists geographically distributed throughout the state of Virginia in 75 different locations to provide retention support. During my management of this program, retention strength went from 65% retention to an 89% retention rate. Boom. What I did, how I did it, went right into it. That one's focused on that event. Do the one for the Virginia State Police, I write it to what I did with that. Do the one for the Washington Baltimore HIDA, do what I did related to that with the number of people I ran. Simple as that. You're using that homework assignment to make sure your resume clearly reflects that you have all those skills and experiences that are listed here that says these are typical assignments you're going to do. That manager wants to know you can do those. Makes it really simple when you know what the answers to the test are, isn't it? We're showing you what you need to show on your resume. But nobody ever sat down and told this to me when I got out of the military or I took any other job I got, any place I ever left. No one told me that it was that easy to do. You can just look in there and see whether you did it or not. And if you did, you just write your resume. It doesn't matter what your job title was. It matters, did you do those skills at that job? So this is the first homework assignment. We've done that. We're a third of the way through what we need to do before we can apply to this position. Then I'm going to go into my requirements section. I'm going to spend a little time here because a few things I want to show you in this section. First thing we're going to do is under qualifications. It's going to tell us what we need to do to qualify for this job. To qualify for this job, you must possess the following: 1 full year of specialized experience equivalent to the next lower grade in federal service. Key word I'm going to say there, and I'm going to stress it: equivalent. Doesn't mean I had to have held a job as a GS-12 in the federal service. It means my experience has to be equivalent to that. It has to be equal in abilities and skills. When I look at my resume, the highest grade I've held in the federal government is 13. I have interviewed and applied for and gotten the interviews for GS-15 positions. That's skipping a grade. Well, you know what? When I worked running life safety for that hospital, I was working at the GS-15 level. But I just wasn't a GS-15 because I didn't work for the federal government. So the key thing about it is I write my resume to reflect that. And I get through to get those interviews at that level because my resume clearly reflects that I'm operating at those levels. So, but then I want to go down to this next section. Where does that experience, what is included in that experience? Experience can be gained in the federal government, state or local government, a nonprofit, the private sector, or as a volunteer. And I'm going to show you where it talks about volunteering again later on in this section. However, your resume must clearly describe at least 1 year of specialized experience. Has to be in there. Welcome to homework assignment number 2. This one, you're going to copy these statements. And guess where we're going to put them? We're going to go right back to a new Word document. And I'm going to go, and you're going to paste them in there. And then you're going to do the exact same homework assignment you just did. You're going to look through and figure out which jobs do you have where you've already done that work. Now, this one, when we're on specialized experience, I'm going to talk about the next part. You're going to put the month, day, and year to the month, day, and year that you worked in that position. That's important because you're going to see why in a minute. But you need to have this information in there. So then you create this whole new list. And then you go back and you rewrite your resume a second time. And you make sure the statements are in there that you just identified as specialized experience statement showing you have those skills and experience. If you just did this one time, you're on par with everybody else. If you've done it 2 to 3 times, you're ahead of the game because most people don't even know to do this. This is something I started teaching in this class because it makes a lot of sense. I'm writing specifically to this vacancy announcement. So once I do this for my homework assignment number 2, I'm going to save it as my specialized experience for the job title. And I'm going to save that as a separate document because I'm going to need this information a little bit later to finish applying for the position. So I'm going to minimize that again. And I'm going to go through, I'm going to read a couple other sections here. They're going to remind you in the next paragraph that experience referred to paid and unpaid experience, including volunteer work, and that volunteer work helps build critical competence, knowledge, and skills that can provide valuable training experience that translate directly to paid employment. You will receive credit for all qualifying experience to include volunteer experience. We're telling you in here, you need to put it there, and it's amazing to me how many people don't list it because they're like, oh, it's just volunteer. I think I could list it. Read the announcements that we give you the information. Next thing I'm going to take you to is this next section right after that. It says note. Always starts off with that word. It's pretty much the same paragraph. Sometimes it's longer, but there's always a link in it for a brief video on how to create a federal resume. Click here. And we're going to open this up and lock it. But this is a video Office of Personnel Management, who owns USA Jobs, put together on writing your federal resume. This is where it's going to show you how to make your resume searchable and everything else, because I already know I saw questions on that. They're going to show you how to do that in the video. I'm going to go ahead and put this link in the chat for you guys, because I think it's important to have. But like I said, you also know now that it's where it is in every FEMA vacancy announcement. So you can always find this information if you need it. So anyway, we have this here, this video, but I want you to look on the right side. Just like when I had to learn how to program my garage door opener, I went to YouTube, I searched how to do it, and then it showed me all these related videos. Same thing here. What are special hiring authorities? Oh, look, there's a video on that. How do I make my volunteer experience count? There's a video on that. You can go through here and watch all these videos that were put together by USA Jobs and the Office of Personnel Management and learn how to do any of these steps in the process. What's the recent graduates? How do I do an advanced search? What's accepted service? We're giving you all the knowledge. That's one of the reasons I love that we put this link in every announcement. You don't have to sit there and guess. You can go back and do the research, do a little bit of legwork on your own while you're sitting there watching television or whatever, and just do some research, see what it is. Make sure you understand before you apply. The biggest mistake any of us can make is to think there and think we know what they're looking for. We're giving you the tools to help make you successful. And I wish somebody would share this with me years ago when I first started applying for federal jobs, because if somebody said, you just go to USA Jobs and apply, and it's just, yeah, that's not it. And I'm trying to keep in time, so I know we only have 6 minutes left. The last place we're going to look at here is how you will be evaluated. It's going to tell us the job has to be, we're going to be evaluated based on how well you meet the qualifications, and your resume and supporting documents must meet that criteria. We're going to recommend you preview all the online questions before you start the process, and we even have a link here for you to review these online questions. It's going to pop it open. You're going to go through here and you're just going to do the exact same thing. You're going to make sure these answers are in your resume. This is the skills that you need to have, but I'm going to one quick section. Homework assignment number 2, please indicate where and when you obtained all the specialized experience. This is where you're going to paste that answer. They're going to look at that and they're going to compare it to your resume. If they don't match, you get a 0 on that one. What happens when we get a 0, Werner? We don't pass.
Correct.
And that's what's important. And it's like, I know I've gone through a lot. I'm getting ready to go over the question slide. There's a ton of information here. And I'm going to share with Werner so he can give it to you guys. I teach this class 3 times a month. I just did it last night. And I do the same thing over because I want you to have this knowledge. If we don't share this knowledge with you, you're going to get frustrated. And there's no reason to be frustrated when there's so much good information out there. So Werner, what other questions do we have so I can try and respect everybody's time here?
We so appreciate you, Chip. This has been incredible. I hear nothing but amazing comments from everybody. Thank you so much for this. I had one of the Jarvis, I believe, earlier. I'm not sure if he's still online, but he had asked, because he's active duty still, Chip. Granted, is from military member, but do we have SkillBridge or SkillBridge involved?
Yes,
or
we have SkillBridge that's managed under my team. Always looking for good SkillBridge candidates. We run our SkillBridge a little differently than some of the corporate companies. We don't do a cohort and say we're bringing on 30 people. What I like to do is, if you're interested in SkillBridge, you reach out to me. I put my information in the chat earlier. I'll do it again. But the thing about it is, if you're interested in SkillBridge, I want to see a good resume, because I'm going to shop you to those managers. I want to make a good fit where it's going to be good for you and good for FEMA. I don't just want to bring somebody on saying, well, I hope it works out. I'd rather shop it around a little bit. And it works really well that way, because then I can really go out and market to those managers that really are looking for those good skill sets. And I have certain managers that I market to all the time because they get it. A guy in my finance department was a wounded warrior. He ran the Marine Corps shooting team. He was infantry before that. He never thought. He's running our finance division now.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, I want to match people with people that know what skills they're looking for to accomplish that mission. So I'm very, very a stickler on that. So that's the way I do it. So thank you for that great question.
Got another really good one here. Really good one. Came from, it's anonymous, but it's really good. Do recruiters often look through resumes to find a candidate, or is it a case-by-case situation?
We do when we have that demand signal from a hiring manager. I mean, every resume that comes in, I look through, I move it into a pool. usually by location. And then what I do is, but a lot of times I already know what managers have already shared with me they're looking for. And I'll look through resumes, and as soon as I see them, I forward that resume on. I just did one today. Somebody I teach one of the classes with from one of the veteran programs, she shared a resume of a contracting specialist with 12 years contracting experience, wants to move back to DC. I just shared that with 2 managers a day. Now they both said, how soon can I interview them? How soon can you get on the phone to the person? It's like, you got to reach out. I can't do that part for you. I can guide you to where the people are. And I'm going to share, I'm a very stickler about, I won't overstep what my lane is, because I want to be able to continue doing stuff like this. And if I start to get in that hiring process,
I get it.
I can't teach like this anymore, because then I'm coaching, and coaching is illegal. But if I'm not interviewing, I'm not the one reviewing the resumes for a qualification, I can teach all I want. And that's one of the things that's my pet peeve on my team, is do not try and make us staffing specialists, because you just cut us off at the knees, and you just precluded everybody from getting this valuable information.
Tell you what we can do, Chip, is we'll make sure from now on to promote these sessions that you're having right now. So I'll make sure that we post that, and then all of our UAGC students and graduates will see those, so then they can attend other ones, because I'm sure this is going to be very, very helpful for them, since government work is very, very popular with our students and graduates. So I thank you so much.
I understand that. I mean, I never thought I'd go back to working for the government again, and once I got back there, I love it.
Exactly. So, I mean, with all these people that we have, and granted, we have a lot of military, but at the same time, I mean, we have plenty of people here that are interested in government work. It doesn't matter if they're military or not. And we just absolutely appreciate your presentation today. So to wrap up here, I want to go ahead and say thank you again. And if you want to connect with FEMA and other organizations that are actively hiring for full-time positions and internships, please log into Handshake through your student portal. We recommend checking Handshake and UAGC Connect regularly for more career services events. Speaking of events, our fall 2023 virtual career fair will occur in Handshake on October 18th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific time. Many outstanding employers will be attending. We currently have, by the way, 28 employers registered and growing. Many federal agencies are attending. This is a great opportunity to network and meet employers from across the United States. We are pleased to, well, I'm not sure if I can twist Chip's arm or anybody at FEMA to attend this event, but I'm hoping that will be the case. No pressure here.
I've already talked to my wife. We're flying in the night before, and as long as our flight's not delayed, I will be at that event.
We are not worthy, Chip. We are not worthy. So you heard it here first. Chip will be at our event, and this is just an amazing event. And as you can see, he just wants everybody to be so successful. So if you can miss it, jump in there and talk to Chip. He's going to be thrilled to speak to you. And thank you, Chip, for doing that. Absolutely.
I have one last thing I always share with everybody.
Yes, sir.
If you do not know how to save the chat, since I put stuff in there to include some documents, please look at the bottom of your chat screen where it says everyone, and you see the little file and the happy face. Next to the happy face are 3 dots. The only choice on there is save chat. If you click on save chat, it's going to tell you the chat was saved, and you can show it in a folder. I can go back to that folder because it pops it right open. That's the entire chat transcript. That everything that was just put in there is there for you. When I teach my federal resume workshop, I save the chat and I send it to everybody that attends. So that way, in case somebody wrote down a link, you can get it, because I want you to have this knowledge. I don't do this just because, you know, they pay me to sit behind a computer. I do this because I really want you guys to be successful in what you do. So thank you very much for Rebecca and Werner. I'm really glad I was included on this today. I'm sorry I took a little longer than you normally do.
No, it's all good. One other thing, if I may, just to wrap up, Chip, because I got a couple of things here I just want to make sure that they're aware of. And just regarding this FEMA information session, in a few days, you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to this recording and information about FEMA careers. If you have any questions for Career Services team on your resume, cover letter, or job search, please email careerservices@uagc.edu or log into Handshake through our student portal to explore more resources. Many thanks again to Chip from FEMA for joining us today, and many thanks to all of you, our students and graduates, for attending UAGC. Obviously, we wouldn't be here without you. This was an amazing, amazing session Chip, we so appreciate you. Thank you for all attending this event today. We look forward to seeing you at more career services hosted events. Don't forget the fall virtual career fair, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chip.